Thank you. That was a very, very kind and not quite accurate introduction, but let's just go with it. Okay, welcome to the afternoon. And I know a number of you may be thinking you're at a natural resources conference. Why are we talking about digital technologies? Well, that's part of why we are here, because digital technologies are going to influence every one of your companies, every sector, and society as a whole. At the Supercluster, it's not working here. Am I advancing or are you? There we go. Oh, now we've gone way far. Okay, there we go. So we get asked three things. They're probably the three questions that you have going through your mind. Who are you? What do you do? And why should you care? I'm going to give you a little bit of context about that, and then I'm going to set out what we do and close off with why you should care. So previously, and I know Bill Tam spoke to this group last year, and we had a long conversation around what's happening with the digital transformation of society and all the data points to show that we are becoming a digital economy globally, not just in British Columbia, and every sector is going to be affected. We don't do that anymore because it is self-evident to everything that we see that we are going to transform globally our economies, our society, and every industry. And digital and data are going to drive those economies and those societies. About $2 trillion will be spent on digital transformation in the next couple of years. Enough said. So why do we need superclusters to help us with all of this? Why do we need some new organization to help us with digital economies and data? A few points up here about how Canada's ranking in innovation and technology. The first one, we're 12th out of 16 on the OECD's innovation scorecard. Even as very humble Canadians, 12th out of 16 is a long way from the podium. And we're slipping. We've got a lot of technology companies in British Columbia and in Canada. However, about 85% of them have less than 10 employees, and about half of them will disappear in 5 years or less. That's not a good trajectory. We're not good at scaling companies, and the last icon that you'll see there, we know for a fact that larger companies are better contributors to the economy, better contributors to society, and provide better, well-paying jobs. So how can we change these dynamics? How can we change the trajectories? One of the things the federal government came up with after listening to lots of submissions from the Growth Council is to change the way we incent innovation in Canada. Historically, innovation in Canada has been incented through programs like IRAP, SIF, SHRED credits, and things like that. Superclusters are not that. We are not funding agencies. And I'm going to unpack what we are in a moment, but basically what there is right now is there's 5 superclusters across the country. Starting in the east, going west, we've got a supercluster in Halifax that looks at the ocean economy. Yes, I remind them that we have one as well. In Montreal, we have a supercluster focused on artificial intelligence, which, of course, globally was developed in Montreal. Canada developed artificial intelligence. We should leverage that. In Ontario, a supercluster focused on manufacturing. The Prairies focused on proteins and agriculture and how can we feed the world, given the amount of space that we have and the technology available to increase our harvests. And on the West Coast in Vancouver, the Digital Technology Supercluster. So who are we? We are a member-based organization comprised now of about 500 organizations ranging from small entrepreneurial organizations of a handful of companies up to big organizations like Tech Resources, Can4, Mosaic, and some of the other ones that you'll see on the screen there. We also have the provincial government as a founding member, as well as all 6 research universities in British Columbia. So we've got a fairly broad base and a very diverse group of members. So what do? Short story. We solve some of industry's and society's biggest problems. That's an audacious statement. It also happens to be true. Here's a couple of the examples of the issues that we're dealing with that we're solving right now through consortia of our members. One is the early detection and forecasting of forest fires. That's an issue that affects every British Columbian and every Canadian, and as we've seen in the last month, globally as well. What if we could use technology developed in British Columbia, initially intended for the aerospace industry, that takes images of any part of the Earth every 15 minutes? And what if we used those images instead of for only the aeronautics and space industry? What if we used it to measure temperature changes in our forest base? So that if the temperature increased by a number of degrees in a certain period of time, we could get an alert. Why don't we do something like that? That's the kind of thing that we are looking at. I'll tell you a little bit more about that project in a minute. What if we built a single data platform so that we could monitor, measure, and improve the health of all freshwater bodies in the country? There is no such platform right now. What if we aggregated all the data that are indicia of the health of a freshwater stream, lake, river, etc., and what if we did that all across Canada using all the data that we have available from individual sources? What if we built, rebuilt, trained, and retrained the most talented, inclusive, and diverse group of staff for today's jobs and tomorrow's economy? What if we did that through British Columbia and became the global center for the most effectively trained digital talent in the world? Those are some of the things we're doing. So, how do we do this? How do we solve some of the industries and society's biggest problems? First of all, we go to industry. We go to industry and we go to public sector first and say, tell us what your most wicked problems are. A lot of times when you think of technology, a lot of people say, that's about entrepreneurs trying to sell me stuff that I'm not sure I need. And while I don't ascribe to that view, I know that's a view that a lot of people have. We start at the other end of the equation. You tell us your problems. And then what we do is we bring disparate and diverse groups of organizations together to talk about that problem and see if we can start to identify solutions. And you know what we find? When you put people together from different backgrounds looking at the same problem, they will bring unbelievably interesting solutions and perspectives that you never would have expected. Who would have thought that one of the sources of building the hospital for tomorrow at St. Paul's is going to be an airplane manufacturing facility? Because they have the same processes, complications, quality, commitment to process, and no allowance for downtime that hospitals have. But you don't have that if you're in a hospital industry and you only look at other hospitals. So we bring diverse groups of organizations together, and we get them to start to think about and ideate around solutions to these various problems. Once we get enough organizations around a problem where we think there might be a solution, we build a consortium, we build a team. We have requirements. There has to be at least 3 organizations on that team because we're not funding one individual organization's strategic plan. One of those organizations must be a small company. We will then add a post-secondary institution, and if you've got a good project, we will put it through a very, very careful selection process that includes evaluation from international evaluators, because we're not about doing yesterday's technology. We're doing about global leading technology. And then if your project's really good, you start it. As the private sector, you start it. Once you hit the milestones in your business plan, I'll come and invest taxpayers' dollars, 43 cents for every dollar you put in. That's not a bad return rate. And so that's roughly how the process works. I've given you the very short circuit view. What do we look at? Digital technologies is a little bit bigger than a bread box. We look at 3 industries: health, natural resources, small industry, and industrial applications. We build on the ecosystem strength that we have in the province. From a technology perspective, we look at the 3 areas that we most need to focus on when it comes to data, starting at the bottom, working up. First of all, we look at areas where we need to collect data. If you're not collecting the data, then you can't really do much with it. So that's where you look at internet, the industrial Internet of Things, blockchain, those kinds of technologies. If you've collected the data and you need to analyze it, we look at projects that do that. Right now in the world, we only analyze 0.5% of all data collected. That's a very large library with a bunch of books not being taken out. This is where we deploy supercomputing, quantum computing into our projects. Once you've collected, analyzed, Then we look at how can you visualize, how can you do something with that? That's augmented reality, virtual reality, et cetera. So we put these together, busy slide. We take industrial opportunities, we look at technology opportunities, we find the wicked problems, and we develop programs. You'll see 3 of them there in the turquoise boxes: digital twins, precision health, capacity building. We also run a parallel program. Capacity building is all about talent. So we do a talent program as well. Very quickly, 3 short stories. We've got about 21 projects. We have actually 21, not about. We've got 21 projects live right now. Turns out to be about $60 million of investment so far. We are right in the middle of our 3rd call for proposals, and we'll announce those selections in March, and then we'll do another call in the fall. So 3 quick stories. The first one, Earth Data Store. I've mentioned that already. This is building a data platform that's going to assess the impact of extreme weather, such as forest fires. And using that data and the deployment of Earth observation satellites by EarthCast, whose logo you'll see there, to find ways that we can mitigate the impact of things like forest fires and then potentially forecast them. That's a game changer for this economy. It's a game changer for the natural resources sector. You'll see the organizations' logos at the bottom there who are involved in this project. Freshwater Data Commons, that's one that I've mentioned already. This is integrating the data from across multiple sources to create a real-time view of the health of the freshwater ecosystem and individual bodies within that ecosystem. That's essential for use, for conservation, for management, for resource development. You'll see that project participants are on the bottom, led by tech. The last one, I'll talk about forest-machine connectivity. What if we could connect all the data points along the supply chain in the forest sector and improve the supply chain's efficiency? And you'll see the group doing that one at the bottom. Autonomous Systems Technician is a capacity building program. And that's another project led by tech, and it's designing new training and certification to focus talent on all the telecommunications aspect of a digitally transformed industry or sector. And this is one of the areas where we're really focusing on Indigenous communities and women, and I do want to acknowledge our gratitude for working with the Indigenous communities, and today and tomorrow and yesterday to the Clay Nation for allowing us to gather on your traditional territories. So that's who we are. What do we do? That's the speed dial version. Why do you care? This is a slide from yesterday. This is the slide last night that said what needs to improve in our resources sector in order to address all those slides that Abacus had earlier in the presentation that are challenges for the sector. The top 3 things identified: promote innovation. We can help you with that. Finding new markets. That is what we do once we've got something to sell. We will help you with that. And doing more to attract, train, and retain talent. We have a complete program that's specifically focused on that. So that was the speed dial version of what we do. I think I'm out of time. Thank you very much. I'm around for any questions the rest of the afternoon. I've got Suzanne Gill and Bill Tam, who is the founder of our Supercluster, with us, and they can answer questions as well. Thanks very much.